Our scripture today comes from Hebrews chapter 11, beginning at verse 26. Listen for the word of the Lord. It was by faith that Moses, when he grew up, refused to be treated as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to share the oppression of God's people instead of enjoying the fleeting pleasures of sin. He thought it was better to suffer for the sake of the Messiah than to own the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking ahead to the great reward that God would give him. It was by faith that Moses left the land of Egypt. He was not afraid of the king. Moses kept right on going because he kept his eyes on the one who is invisible. It was by faith that Moses commanded the people of Israel to keep the Passover and to sprinkle blood on the doorposts so that the angel of death would not kill their firstborn sons. It was by faith that the people of Israel went right through the Red Sea as though they were on dry ground. But when the Egyptians followed, they were all drowned. It was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho 7 days and the walls came crashing down. It was by faith that Rahab the prostitute did not die when all the others in her city who refused to obey God, for she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. Well, how much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of the faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions, quenched the flames of fire, and escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned to strength. They became strong in battle and put whole armies to flight. Women received their loved ones back again from death. But others trusted God and were tortured, preferring to die rather than turn from God and be free. They placed their hope in the resurrection to a better life. Some were mocked and their backs were cut open with whips. Others were chained in dungeons. Some died by stoning, and some were sawed in half. Others were killed with the sword. Some went about in skins of sheep and goats, hungry and oppressed and mistreated. They were too good for this world. They wandered over deserts and mountains, hiding in caves and holes in the ground. All of these people we have mentioned received God's approval because of their faith. Yet none of them received all that God had promised. For God had better things in mind for us that would also benefit them. For they can't receive the prize at the end of the race until we finish the race. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily hinders our progress. And let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, on whom our faith depends from start to finish. He was willing to die a shameful death on the cross because of the joy he knew would be his afterward. Now he is seated in the place of highest honor beside God's throne in heaven. Friends, this is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. to buy a new phone because mine died. It did not recognize the SIM card that was in it. And of course, the first thing you think of when your phone's about to die is, oh my gosh, I can't lose my contacts or my pictures, right? First thing you think about. Well, as soon as I went in there and it hadn't completely died, it would do things. So, and I could see my pictures and all that. It's not like black screen or anything. It just said no SIM card. So I went in there. Can you fix it? No, we can't fix it. You have to get a new one. I said, okay, I backed up everything in the cloud because, yeah, I see here where you just backed it up like 20 minutes ago. So everything's there. Everything will come down just exactly like you had it on your phone on the new phone. So all I have to do is get used to the new phone. The cloud is an amazing place, is it not? And you may not realize when you were celebrating the nation's 200th birthday that something else as important was going on. That was when Steve Wozniak and Jobs were 25 years old and came up with the first Apple computer. And here we are today with little mini computers in our pockets that can access a world of information, whether it's true or not. And then we don't even have to put things on, back in the day, floppy disks or cards. I'm sorry, I'm really old. We had cards that you fed through a huge computer that took up a whole room. And if you had one card out of space, out of line, or a period missing, or a dot missing, or if some stupid person decided to hit your arm and your cards went flying and they were out of order, well, that's how murders happen. You learned real quick that when your teacher told you that you better number those cards, that you better number those cards. But now we have microchips that can store all kinds of information. And we have this invisible cloud up there that you just whoosh, send stuff up to, and whoosh, it sends it down. How does it do that? I'm still trying to explain that to my sister Terry. She's a little technologically challenged. And
AT&T calls it
black magic, yeah. Black magic. It just is something that sort of boggles our mind. But yet, we don't know how we would live without it today. Last night I got a call about a 9:45, and I immediately go into, okay, what's happened? But it was my next door neighbor. He goes, Tammy, I was walking and your lights are on your truck. I said, yeah, they would just come on randomly and I'll turn them off and they'll stay off for a little while and then they'll come back on. So I Googled, and right there it is. A little rubber stopper had dry rotted and fallen out behind my brake pad. My brake pedal told me exactly how to fix it. So at 10 o'clock, I'm out there doing my own thing because the cloud was able to help me. The witnesses of somebody who lived this, knows what the problem is, told me how to fix it with a simple bolt. In 5 seconds. It took me longer to get down in the floor of the truck than it did to fix the thing. But had I not had that wonderful cloud of community, number one, my battery was almost dead. I finally got it started, but it did a few boom, 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 boom. Come on, come on. I would have never known how to fix it. I would not even have tried to fix it. That's what the cloud that God gave us is all about. If you Google cloud in the Bible and see how many times cloud is mentioned, we see it for the first time, when God and Moses are getting the Israelites out of bondage, out of slavery. And he leads them by what? A cloud in the day, a cloud pillar in the day, and a pillar of fire at night. You may not realize or may not remember that Okay, we know they wandered in the wilderness for a long time, 40 years, until a generation had died off. A generation that would have forgotten what bondage in Egypt was all about. But also during that time, they learned to follow God. When that pillar of cloud moved, they knew it was time to pack up and move. It may be that they were there for a day, 2 days, a week, a year. They just knew whenever the cloud of God moves, it's time for us to move. And they did that for 40 years. For 40 years. Obeying, okay, God's telling us to move, we need to move. And I'm thinking, they probably grumbled, especially if they only stayed there a day. We just got unpacked. We were at the last place a year. We thought surely we'd be here a year, but no. We just got everything unpacked and they told us to pack it all back up, God. Okay, well, you must have a reason. A cloud that said, okay, here's where you stay until it's time to go. And I'll show you. You just follow me. You follow this cloud. And then the next time we hear about a cloud, it's about always the presence of God in a cloud in the temple, in a cloud on the mountain, that God was in the cloud. They were so afraid, and he told them, don't touch the mountain or you'll die. So this magnificent cloud that represented God's presence with the people, he's also telling us here in Hebrews, there's a cloud of all these people who have followed me throughout time, who have lived lives just like you, maybe a little harder, maybe a little easier, who have not given up the faith. And they're here in this room with us. And it's not black magic, and it's not ghosts. It's a presence of people of knowing that there's somebody cheering for us. Jesus, we know, is in heaven praying for us, but there's also all those people that we just heard in the line of faith in Hebrews who went through wonderful things waiting for us to finish the race. I always talk about, I'm ready for Jesus to come back. I'm ready for his new earth to happen. I'm ready for all the brokenness of this world to be healed. And that can't happen until we finish the race, all of us. They were promised something, and they never got to see the end of it because they didn't get to see Jesus. We're blessed enough to know that Jesus came, and there's a hope, that there's a reason we run this race. There's a reason we hang on to that cloud of witnesses cheering us on, because we know this is not all there is. We know we can't get through this life without those people of faith around us. Now, I knew I could come to church today and tell my truck lights won't turn off. And he would have done the very same thing I did. He would have Googled it to see what would happen. I know that when I'm at Camp John Spear with those campers, I can feel all the people who have come before me. John Spear, Marion Shelton, all the people that helped, John Manus, all the people that helped make that camp, who helped build that camp, John Foster, pictures of him. We wouldn't have been able to do that had their faith not gone out on that limb and bought that property out of their own pockets, not knowing if Presbyterian was going to approve it and pay them back. But the Maces about broke their marriage up. Martha was so mad at him, she could have killed him when he came home that day. She told me. Here Joe comes home and says, I've signed a loan for almost 100 acres on Ball Mountain. You've done what? The three of them signed that loan, stepping out in faith. Stepping out in faith. And no, it's not all I dream for it to be, but I just think I just got to keep building because somebody will come after me that will make it even better. What witnesses are we being to the world? And who is gathered around us to help us realize we're not running this race alone? There's always someone there to pick us up, to say, come on, we can do this. Come on. Yeah, it may get torn down. It may burst into flames. It may get flooded out, but we're going to keep going because the cloud of God has told us, this is where I want you to serve. This is where I want you to be. And you're not doing it alone. I am always with you. Imagine when you're in that encampment, just moving from place to place, wondering if you'll ever have a home, but seeing in the midst of your nightmares that pillar, that cloud, whether fire or just the cloud, in your presence, knowing it's going to be okay. God is right here with me. God's right here with me, and my family of faith is right here with me. We can get through anything together. I was hoping Donna and Steve were going to be here today, because when I was studying this and realizing the times that the cloud of witnesses, both gone on and those who are still here, have been with me in times of my hardest time in life, Donna and Steve Wittenberg came to mind. We had been in the hospital 4 weeks and Daddy was still hanging on. And I had always told everybody, don't come visit. Daddy wouldn't want anybody to see him like this, and he can't talk to you, so don't come visit. And Donna and Steve came the day before he died. Didn't call and ask, just showed up. And had brought, I think, a fruit basket, if I'm not mistaken. And just stayed and talked to me for about 20 minutes. They didn't stay long. And Donna had talked about how her father had been there in that hospital and had died. Not very long before, about 2 years. And she said, it was hard for me to walk in here. I didn't understand that until 3 weeks after Daddy died. We took cookies back to the floor. And my mom and my sister couldn't go in. They said, I just don't think I can do that. I said, it's okay, I'll do it. And I went up to that floor to give those cookies, and I didn't realize how hard that was until I lived through it too. And then I realized how hard it was for Donna to come to that hospital and support me. We are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses that keep us going, especially when we need it most. That cheer us on when we have fallen flat on our face in that race of God, race of life, race of trials and tribulations, when we think nothing's gone right. And there's somebody beside us on their knees picking us up and setting us on our feet and grabbing our arm and saying, come on. We've got this. We can do this. One of the illustrations said that what pronoun we use in our books, in our writing, shows something about where our focus is in our life. And it said up until 1960, 65, usually the pronouns we used in books and in writing was we. We do this, we do that. After 65, it slowly increased that the pronoun used was always I. Not we anymore, but I. How interesting and that's in America. That's not worldwide, that's in America. That we've gone from an individualistic sense of, I can do it by myself. I don't need you. Leave me alone. Don't make me have to deal with people who are different from me. Don't make me have to get to know somebody new. I'm fine the way I am. We aren't. We're not meant to be. We're not made that way. We're meant to be part of the body of Christ. We're meant to be in community. We're meant to be in a cloud of witnesses, supporting one another, laughing with one another, enjoying one another's lives, sharing one another's grief, and not worrying when we mess up that we look around and go, well, I just made a fool of myself in front of everybody. I got 3 pictures from my niece this morning. Terry was doing the children's sermon at the Greenville Church, and she had told me what it was on. It's about Jesus being asleep in the bottom of the boat, and the storm coming, and the disciples being all upset because Jesus is asleep and not worried. And he gets up after they shake him awake, and he calms the sea. And she goes, I know what I'm going to do. She didn't tell me exactly. She just asked for a clear jug. And she goes, I want to do something that makes the waters, calm and then like a storm. Well, in the pictures I got sent this morning, there's a picture of Terry and Dusty and little Lily sitting on the steps. And she has this picture of blue water. And they're just listening intently, you can see. And the next picture, she has put something in that blue water. And it has overflowed the pitcher. And there is blue water. And you can see Lily going. There's blue water all over the carpet. And Terry's just got that, oh my, I didn't realize it'd do that look on her face. That's the joys of serving as the community of faith. We're going to mess up. We're going to do things wrong. We can worry about it and look around and go, uh-oh, did anybody see me do that? Or we can own it and laugh about it and say, yep, I messed up. But hey, I tried. And be that witness that says, it's okay. I wouldn't get up there and do the children's sermon. So the fact that you're doing it at all is good for me. Are we the kind of church that encourages people to try and fail and picks them up? Are we the kind of church that says, well, you got to be really good to be here? You got to have the right clothes, drive the right car, smell good. God knows how hard it is to be a people of faith. He knows how stubborn we are, how unforgiving we are. And he still tells us, I'll never leave you. And guess what? There's a lot of people cheering you on who have been there where you are. Yeah, that's the kind of cloud I want to live in. Amen.